The Los Angeles Chargers have a lot to look forward to in 2025. So in today's video, I want to talk about the Los Angeles Chargers and why I personally believe the LA Chargers are becoming scary good. Subscribe if you're new, let's hop into it. So we are going to begin this video off by talking about what happened last year, then we'll talk about their offseason, and then towards the end, we'll talk about what I think this team will look like in 2025. In terms of some general statistics, offensively speaking, they were not terribly impressive, but I thought they were good enough. They ranked 13th in points per game, 20th in yards per game, and 20th in touchdowns per game. And for the most part, most of their statistics are about league average. They were not the greatest at running the football, though I think there needs to be some context added here. We'll get to that in a moment. But they ran the ball the 10th most in the NFL. They had 4.0 yards per rush, which was the 27th best in the league. And they ran the ball about 26.7 rushes per game. Passing the football wise, they were fairly impressive, but nothing terribly outlandishly good. They only threw the ball on 55.09% of plays, which was 23rd best in the league. They had a about league average completion percentage, 7.6 yards per pass, and they only threw an interception on 1.29% of snaps. Defensively speaking, this team was awesome last year, though a little inconsistent towards the back end. They ranked 2nd in opponents' points per game, only allowing 18.5, 11th in opponents' yards per game, and 1st in opponents' touchdowns per game. They were dominant in the red zone, dominant on 3rd down, though their 4th down conversion rate was a little bit higher than what you'd want. Against the run, they were fairly solid, only giving up 0.4 rushing touchdowns per game, which was the best in the NFL, though they did give up 4.7 yards per rush. And against the pass, they ranked top 10 in multiple different categories, like opponents' yards per pass, opponents' passing yards per game, opponents' interception thrown rate, sack percentage. So this was a team that was very balanced from having a solid offense but a really good defense. Now I think on the offensive end, we need to add some level of context to some of those numbers. For starters, you did have a rookie tackle in Joe Alt, who I thought had a good rookie season, but definitely had some bad plays here and there, which is fine. He was a rookie. He's going to get significantly better as time goes on. This team also didn't really have a go-to wide receiver for a lot of the earlier portions of the season. They didn't really know what they had in Ladd McConkey until towards the back end of the year when McConkey really started to get things going. I think once they got McConkey going, this offense was able to kind of open up a lot more. It's also important that we throw in the context that J.K. Dobbins also missed a lot of time last year because of injuries. But when J.K. was out there, he was actually one of the better running backs out there in the league. So I think once you kind of take that into account, you can kind of see why this offense sort of struggled and why I can kind of see the silver lining as to why this offense should be better next year. Defensively speaking, this was an awesome unit. Now, I do think as the year kind of went on, the defense sort of came back down to earth after how dominant they were in the first half of the year. But this was still a great defense in the back stretch, and I don't think they were the reason why they were an early exit in the playoffs, though they definitely could have performed a lot better. So all in all, I really like what this team is looking like moving forward. Let's now talk about what they did this offseason to kind of fix up some of their issues they had last year. In free agency, this team took its time. They really did not go out there and sign too many players, especially a lot of big money guys, even though they had a good amount of money to work with, which can be seen as either a good thing or a bad thing. They bring in Mekhi Becton, who had an awesome year last year for the Philadelphia Eagles, 2 years, $20 million. Dante Jackson, 2 years, $13 million. Najee Harris, 1 year, $9.25. They bring back Mike Williams, Deshaun Hand, Tyler Conklin, and a number of other depth options here as well. They re-signed a bunch of their key players, such as guys like Khalil Mack, Tyre Tart, Denzel Perriman, so on and so forth. They gave out some early extensions to Elijah Molden, which I thought was a great contract because he was great last year, and Bradley Bozeman. And they also released Joey Bosa, which I know a lot of Chargers fans were a little sad about. This was not the most impressive free agency haul. I think they could have maybe done a little bit better, but I still think they did get better overall as a team. You bring in a veteran tight end like Tyler Conklin, who will just be super solid, will be good in run blocking, can get you something in the passing game. You bring in Mekhi Becton, who is just an absolute bulldozer at guard. You pair him up next to probably Joe Alt, and you look at your offensive line and think that's a damn good offensive line now. Dante Jackson's a veteran corner. He's not the super high-end cornerback one, but this team really didn't need that. They could have really used just a veteran presence, and I think Dante can be that guy. Najee Harris is, of course, Najee Harris. He's not a 1,500 rushing yard per season guy, but he kind of fits exactly what Jim Harbaugh wants to do. That physical, Barali-style guy who's willing to do whatever it takes to push the pocket. And then you bring back Mike Williams, again, a veteran within this offense. He's been with Justin Herbert in years past. Last year was a struggle, dealt with a lot of injuries and just coming back from that injury. Let's see if this year he can kind of return to form. Deshaun Hand is a veteran defensive interior. We'll see if he can perform for this team. Re-signing Khalil Mack was a big-time deal. 1 year, $18 million. High reward, low risk. Made a lot of sense. Now, this team still does have $26 million in open cap space for 2025, which means they can hand out another extension, or they could also just sign a couple other players. So I wouldn't be surprised if they went out there and made a few more small moves to improve the team, but I also would not hold my breath. Right now, the Chargers are actually financially in a really sound situation. I think the last thing you want to do is just get a little bit too risky and go out there and try to sign too many big names. Right now, I think they're in a pretty good spot. But let's go ahead and move over to the draft because I thought their draft was pretty solid. In the first round, they took running back Amari Hampton. In round 2, Trey Harris. Round 3, Jamari Caldwell. Round 4, Kyle Kennard. Round 5, both Keandre Lambert-Smith and Arunde Gadsden. Branson Taylor in round 6, RJ Mickens in round 6, and Triquez Bridges. I apologize if I said that wrong. We're going to go at this pick by pick, starting off with Amari Hampton. I thought Amari Hampton was an awesome pickup. Now, admittedly speaking, when the pick happened, I was not the biggest fan of the pick. But I think as time has kind of gone on, I've really started to kind of fall in love with this pick. I'm not like the biggest fan of it, but I can definitely see what they're going for here. Najee Harris was only a 1-year signing. And even though I think Najee and Amarian are kind of similar backs, I obviously think that Amarian is going to be your long-term answer. And I just think in general, like Najee Harris fits so perfectly what Jim Harbaugh wants to do. And Amarian Hampton epitomizes exactly what Jim Harbaugh wants to do. He wants to be a smash-mouth team, rely on his offensive line, run the football 25, 30 times a game. And now that you have those two different running backs with similar styles, it's never going to be a situation where if somebody goes down with an injury, you don't have a backup. You have a perfect backup in Hampton. And if Hampton goes out there and is just balling one game, then shoot, you can have him be your primary back with Najee kind of coming off the bench and spelling him. And long term, after this upcoming season, even if they don't bring back Najee, Amari Hampton is ready to step into that full-time role. He's going to be perfectly fine in the situation within the scheme with a great offensive line and a great quarterback. It's a really good situation for Amari Hampton. Now, I will say this. One of the reasons why I did not love the pick was because it was a super deep running back class, and I thought they might have been better off just moving running back in terms of priority down to like round 2. But with Colston Loveland off the board and Tyler Warren off the board, maybe you could have snagged up like a Matthew Golden or one of those receivers that were still available. I also thought maybe getting an edge rusher would have been what I also maybe would have considered at pick 22. But I guess the board didn't fall the way that maybe they thought it would, so they took Amari Hampton. I think he's a great player, and I think, honestly, his fit within this team is just going to prove wonders. Then in round 2, they took Trey Harris. I think Trey Harris is sort of a perfect fit for this team. You have Ladd McConkey, who can do a lot of work in the slot. He can play on the outside, but primarily he's going to do most of his work in the intermediate to the close range. You have Quentin Johnston, who is somebody who I think is a little bit underrated. Like, I think he gets a lot of hate, and in some ways, rightfully so, but I don't think he's completely useless or anything like that. But he is a bit more of a gadget guy. You have to kind of scheme him open. He can win a little bit downfield, but that's not really his forte. You have Mike Williams, who can win downfield, but last year looked really bad, so I don't know if you can consistently rely upon him. But Trey Harris is that deep ball winner. He's the guy that can open up the field so much for Justin Herbert. It's going to allow Ladd McConkey to have so much more separation and just a lot more space to operate in the underneath, because Trey Harris is probably going to primarily run a lot of deep routes and a lot of routes to, go vertically and create space down there. And I just think Trey Harris in general is a kind of a perfect fit for what this team needed. I didn't feel like Trey Harris was perfect for every situation. I felt like Trey Harris needed to go to a team that specifically needed a downfield stretcher, somebody that can make big plays, but also has upside to be a bit more of a well-rounded receiver if he has a couple years of development. And the Chargers are a perfect spot for Trey Harris. I think he fits this team perfectly. He's going to be utilized properly. His athleticism, his downfield catch radius, his ability to make big-time splashy plays is something this Chargers team has been kind of missing within their passing game these past few years. And now they kind of bring that back with Trey Harris, and I think that'll open up a lot more for not only Ladd McConkey, but also for Amari Hampton in this ground game. Round 3, they took Jamari Caldwell. Was not the biggest fan of this pick. I like the player that Caldwell is. It's just, to me, I don't really feel like the Chargers were in dire need of a big presence in the middle. I felt like instead they really needed like a pass rusher. However, Jamari Caldwell will instantly step in there, probably play nose tackle. He is absolutely massive, like a huge individual that, just can get off blocks. He's somebody that's going to eat up a lot of space. He won't get you 5 sacks a season. He might get you like 1 or 2, but really you're getting him because you think he's going to be a dominant run stuffer for the foreseeable future. And that's probably what they're going to end up getting with their 3rd round pick here. Kyle Kennard is sort of an upside pick. He has the productivity, but he is somebody that does struggle when people get his hands on him. Like, he doesn't have too many counters. I think right now in an ideal situation, he's coming off the edge sort of like in a wide 9s position and can really just beam off the edge, grow up his momentum. And I just think right now he needs time. I don't think he's prepared to immediately become an impactful player quite yet. So that was one of my bigger issues with this Chargers draft. I felt like they waited too long to take an edge rusher, which I thought was a big time need, or just in general, a pass rusher outside of Khalil Mack and Tuli Tuipulotu. They don't really have anybody up the middle that can get constant pressure either. So I felt like waiting till round 4 to get somebody that can put pressure on a quarterback was a little bit of a mistake. In round 5, Keandre Lambert-Smith, I thought this was appropriate value for him. I think he has a level of upside. He has some productivity for Auburn. I must admit, I don't really know what his role is going to be on this team. He's a 5th round pick. Kind of think he's going to be more of a special teams guy. I felt like on film and on tape, he wasn't as fast as what you'd want him to be, but then he went in the 40s, and I think he ran like a 4.37, which was a little bit surprising. So we'll see if he might be more of an upside pick. Branson Taylor, again, more of a depth option. We'll see if he can make some adjustments and get better and improve and become that swing tackle for this team. Same with Trikweze Bridges, but the one I really wanted to focus on was RJ Mickens. Like, he, in my opinion, was definitely worthy of going a lot higher on day 3. I thought he was probably more appropriately valued as like an early round 5, late round 4 pick. He falls to round 6, and I think that this is pretty solid value for the Chargers. They didn't really need a safety, nor did they really need a ton of help in the secondary because they're pretty young there and they have so many different options. But RJ Mickens to me was just great value. He's super solid. Yes, he doesn't have like the super ultra top end speed. He's not the biggest guy in the world, but he's just smart. He's calculated. He knows how to take appropriate angles. And I think he'll find a way to make the roster and probably be a contributor in some ways. So just in totality, I thought this was a fine draft class for the LA Chargers, but I think that they kind of missed the mark on the defensive line. But now we look at the depth chart for the LA Chargers, and we're going to talk about this offense first, and then we'll talk about this defense. Offensively speaking, I think it's one of the better units out there. In terms of some leftover needs that they still kind of need to address, I think probably that left side of your interior offensive line, such as a center or left guard, could be something they look to upgrade. Zion Johnson hasn't really proven to be consistently dominant at that guard spot, but if you feel okay about him, then you're fine. Maybe a long-term center option might be helpful there too. I still think tight end's a big time need, even though you did take Gadsden. If he can develop and become something great, then awesome, but Will Dissly, Tyler Conklin, they're a little bit older. They don't have much upside. So I think long-term, you want to get that tight end guy. Now, I don't really think that it was a bad thing for them not to reach on a tight end. Like, they could have hypothetically took Mason Taylor in round 1, but that would have been a pretty big time reach for me. With Loveland off the board, with Tyler Warren off the board, I did not hate the fact that they passed on a couple tight ends. I also think if Trey Harris doesn't really develop to be the guy we think he is, same thing with Quentin Johnston. Like, I think they could really use a consistent big frame option, sort of like a George Pickens or a DK Metcalf type of guy, which maybe you might be able to find in like a 2nd round pick next year. But again, that's if Trey Harris does not become that guy. So I am willing to take the bet that he will become the guy. But even if Trey Harris is that downfield stretcher, maybe you want like another more technical receiver that can win a bit more deep and just be a bit more of a consistent threat. Basically what I'm saying is I think Trey Harris is better suited as a wide receiver 3, with McConkey best suited as like a 1 or 2 option. And then you kind of need somebody that can spell Lad McConkey. Maybe that could be Keandre Lambert-Smith, or it could also be Quentin Johnston. We'll just have to wait and see. Also, I would not count out Mike Williams because I think he should be better this year than what he was last year. But they have options. They have different ways they can go about it. I would just personally, right now, as I see it right now, maybe like to see an upgrade next year. But other than that, that's kind of just nitpicky stuff. I actually think like their only major issue they need to fix immediately is tight end and maybe something within the interior of the offensive line. But I don't think that it's a dire need right now. Like, I think this offense should be pretty good next year. No, defensively speaking, I do have some issues with this defense. Now, again, I do expect this defense to be just as good, if not slightly better, or maybe a smidge worse than what they were last year. This was a top 10 defense. I expect them to be around that range this year. I must admit, I do worry a smidge about their pass rush. I feel really good about their secondary. They have so much variety, so many different young players to work with that I have really no big concerns with those guys. And I don't really have any issues with their run defense either. I think their run defense should be very solid. And I don't have any issues with their linebackers either, at least their inside linebackers, because you have Deion Henley, Troy Dye, Denzel Perriman, and Junior Colson, so you have some young pieces while also having some veterans. I do worry a little bit, though, about this defensive line. Obviously, you have Tuli Tuipulotu, who's a great player. You have Bud Dupree. You have Khalil Mack. Mack is older at this stage of his career. He's not a 10-sack-a-season type guy, but he's still a damn good player that you're getting a lot of productivity from. So for this upcoming season, you feel okay about those guys, but long term, I do have some question marks. But this interior defensive line is just really a nothing burger in terms of any sort of pass rush upside. You have Otito Ogbania, who just doesn't get a lot of pressure on quarterback. Same with Naquan Jones. Tyir Tart can get to the quarterback, but that's not like his really forte. Like, he's not going to be that guy consistently. Same with Jamari Codwell. Deshaun Hand, I think, only had 1 sack last year, has never really been a consistent pass rusher. You do have Justin Aboigbe, who I think had like 3 sacks last year, so maybe you can get something from him, but I just kind of worry that your 3 interior defensive linemen are not going to be consistent threats at getting to the quarterback, which can be fine if your edge rushers or if your scheme can work around it, which I think they'll figure a way around it, but I do just kind of worry that in a world where Khalil Mack has a regression from last year, and if Tuli Tuipulotu cannot completely pick up the slack, and if Kyle Kennard isn't quite ready to get to play, I could see a world where this pass rush for the Chargers is not particularly great. Now, I will say I completely trust the coaching staff for the Chargers. They have one of the better staffs out there. They consistently know what they're doing, and they just have so much variety, and I'm sure they'll find a way around it. So this could just be an issue on paper that doesn't really play out on the field. But with that all said, what does the 2025 Chargers look like? Well, I think it's important that we at least look at the schedule first. Schedule-wise, this is a pretty interesting schedule. You have the Chiefs, the Raiders, the Broncos, 3 straight really tough games early on. Surprisingly, 3 straight division games too. Then you have the Giants, that's a winnable one. The Commanders, that's a tough game, but I would say it's winnable. Miami, Indianapolis, Minnesota, 3 straight fairly winnable games. Same with Tennessee, same with Pittsburgh, same with Jacksonville. So up to their week 12 bye week, like I would say half the games are difficult, but I would say over half the games, maybe excluding Minnesota, but I would say a lot of these games, the Chargers will be favored. And then after the bye week, you have the Raiders again, the Eagles, the Chiefs, the Dallas Cowboys, the Texans, and the Broncos. So I would say early before the bye, it's fairly easy. Like, they should have a winning record at this point, but after the bye week, that's a pretty tough schedule. I'm not going to predict wins or losses quite yet. I'll do that later in the offseason because we still got like 3 months to go, so be patient with me. But as I see it right now, I think the Chargers are probably a playoff lock. I think they'll definitely be making the playoffs, and if they take the appropriate steps to become a better team, I could see this team making a fairly deep playoff run. I would not call them championship contenders quite yet, but I will say that I think they're easily probably playoff contenders, if not maybe playoff locks. I know playoff locks are hard to determine right now, but I would say they're definitely playoff contenders. Not quite yet championship contenders, but they are building a team that if they can just add a few more pieces, they have the money, they should have the resources. If they can add a few more pieces to that defensive line, fix up some of their offensive issues, this is going to be an awesome team. They have a great coaching staff, a fantastic quarterback, some really nice young weapons to work with, and some just young pieces in general. It's not a very old team. It's a pretty young team in at least most of their positions. So I like where the Chargers are going. This is a team like 2 years ago that I felt really worried about. I was very concerned about their future. And then you bring in Harbaugh, and I think everything he's done so far has been all about building a culture, building a team that matches his identity, and I think he's just done a really good job. It's a fantastic coaching staff with some really good players, so I think this Chargers team is for sure becoming one of the more scary teams in the NFL. But you guys, let me know in the comment section below, what do you think about the Chargers? What do you think about their draft class, and how many wins in 2025? Let me know down below. And if you enjoyed, hit the like and subscribe button. Love you guys. Peace.